Hello everyone. This is the fourth video in the series, and a fresh new week. And I have got quite some feedback and quite some support over the last three videos, and I'm looking forward to do this regularly. Right now, I don't know what regularly means. I'm going to keep trying to do this every day and see what works for me, and that would become regular for me going forward. For now, it's I'm just going to keep it on a best effort basis. Whenever it's possible, I'll keep doing this. Um, so quick recap. If you haven't, if this is the first video you're seeing, I every day, I get this highlights from a tool called Readwise. It's a tool that it collects the different highlights from all the different applications I use for reading books. Kindle, and there is an application called Libby, which is for library books, and even physical books. I can take photographs from there and take note snippets. So it collects notes from there, highlights from there, and it surfaces. I mean, I can go and see it anytime, but it also surfaces 10 highlights every day. And this in this video, I'm going to walk over the 10 highlights from today. I keep doing this, like I said, the three previous videos. You can go and check them out. It's in the playlist, which I'll be linking towards the end. And let's get started with today's video. So, yeah, the first highlight is from Originals. We have come across this book a couple of other times. And it says, while the bystanders' parents focused on enforcing compliance with rules for their own sake, the rescuers' parents encouraged the children to consider the impact of their actions on others. So, this has, the previous two highlights also, which we reviewed, was around this topic itself. Um, Upbringing of children. There was a social experiment where the author, I'm not sure if the author, or maybe the author is referring to a study, I'm forgetting, but the study was conducted on two different groups, which like with different styles of upbringing, where in one group the parents encourage the children to consider the impact of their action on others, not like blindly follow the rules of the society, but consider why you're following it. And the first one was, you know comply with the rules for their own sake, because the society tells you to follow these rules, follow them for that reason. And it turned out, the latter group which I mentioned, the first group in this quote, um, the children over there turned out to be bystanders. And it was a social experiment. You can read the book for more detailed analysis. And again, it kind of goes with every other quote that I have discussed in the previous videos. So it might be helpful to read this whole topic rather than just this highlight. I will move forward for now. Okay, team topologies. Yeah, I really like this book, and I think it's come for the first time in my review. A recorded review. An even more stringent team of API approach is taken at cloud vendor AWS, where CEO Jeff Bezos insisted on almost paranoid levels of separation between teams. Excuse me. For example, each team at AWS must assume that every other team becomes a potential DOS attacker requiring service levels, quotas, and throttling. So, excuse me. So, we came across this kind of, when reviewing in a couple of highlights from another book called Working Backwards, that was written by Amazon employees. And we talked about, um, the two pizza team, and what was that, single threaded leadership, right? So I think, yeah, this is very much aligned with what we already discussed in those days. Basically, the teams are completely independent. I think this quote is quite apt, compared to the other highlights. This is quite, it's quite clear. Each team at AWS must assume that every other team is a source of DOS, which means that the team has to implement all the best practices within themselves. There is no there's no assumption, there's no inbuilt assumption. Okay, if the request is coming from another team, it is, it is assumed to be okay. And not only does this promote better security, but it also promotes better abstractedness. Like the products become very much more flexible than you would otherwise imagine. And I think it's reflected in AWS services today. The projects, each product is quite independent of another. Excuse me. Well, let's move on. Okay, this is again from originals. When you're doing something original that challenges the status quo, you have to be careful about how you communicate your why. When people championing moral change explain their why, it runs the risk of clashing with deep seated convictions. When creative nonconformists explain their why, it may violate common notions of what's possible. So, this is from a section which talks about, why it's not always a good idea to explain your rationale behind whatever you're changing. I mean, you have to, like you have to communicate your rationale, but you have to be careful about how you do it. Like the quote says. So it's I can't really think of a very good example right now. But it's very often that if you're going to promote, if you're going to propose a change, chances are that change is iterative. It is fixing on problems introduced from the status quo. Like whatever the process exists right now, it's going to fix the problems over there. And if you don't carefully communicate this, the message that could the message that would go out would be that the current system is not perfect. I mean, it is not perfect, but there is the ego in between, right? It's not nice to hear. I mean, if you imagine you worked on something and somebody else comes and tells you that no, um, it is not great and we have to change it. You may agree, but it's not going to feel good. You're not going to feel good about it. And suppose the reasons are quite deep seated. If they're very internal to you, or if you identify with them strongly, you're going to what's the word? You're going to for the lack of a better word, you're going to rebel against that. So that's the reason you have to be careful about how you communicate the why, the reason where you're making a change. Again, it makes more sense in the larger context of this chapter in the book. Originals, it's quite a good book. I mean, I would recommend you to read it. Again, like I said, I would link to all of these books in the description. Okay, 4,000 Weeks, another book that we have covered earlier. We treat our plans as though they are a lasso thrown from the present around the future in order to bring it under our command. But all a plan is, all it could ever possibly be, is a present moment statement of intent. It's an expression of your current thoughts about how you would ideally like to deploy a modest influence over the future. The future, of course, is under no obligation to comply. So this is another reinforcing statement about why plans. Well, I mean, I don't want to say worthless, but essentially it's that I mean, we sometimes give too much importance to plans, and there is this. I think there are many sayings along these lines. It's like plans are useless. Planning is everything. So yeah, you have to plan, but it's the planning that is the important part, not the plan itself. Your plan has to be designed to keep changing. So that's essentially what it's saying. Because when you plan something, you're essentially communicating a statement of intent that this is what I would like to do. And you're talking about the future, of course, is not really like the quote says, it's under no obligation to comply. It's not going to it's not going to follow exactly what you said. Your plan has to change with that, which again, with the planning is important. It's not that okay, don't plan. The author is not suggesting that, but again, how you treat your plans. The danger is sometimes we identify too strongly with the plan, and when things don't go according to the plan, we abandon the whole pursuit. And I mean, that's wasteful, right? So yeah, I think I mean, I can keep talking about this, but I think in the interest of time, let's move on. Okay, cues. Like I said, I've not really read much in this book, but let's see. The moment we touch someone or someone touches us, our chemistry changes. Touch creates the potent chemical oxytocin. Oh, sorry, oxytocin. As we have learned, oxytocin plays a complicated role in our body, but in interactions, it increases trust, warmth, and rapport. Even small touches, a high five, a fist bump, or a pat on the back produce oxytocin and encourage trust. Again, I mean, I'm just going to leave it at that. I like I said, it's like an early thing. I mean, I happen to agree with this quote. I have noticed that okay, people who touch sometimes it may feel very. I mean, to me, it does feel little weird if someone comes and kind of holds me by the arm, for example. It feels little weird. Um, But yeah, I have seen that okay, it changes the nature of interaction, once somebody approaches you in that way. I mean, yeah, I mean, of course, in everything in moderation. um, you have to respect people's privacy, the personal space, but again, like, careful interactions, careful outreaches can definitely increase trust. Let's go on. Everyday chaos. Okay, this is a book. I mean, I was really impressed by this book, and yeah, I was kind of surprised it didn't come up, because this comes up quite frequently in my Readwise. So morally, you may well end up denigrating the body not only as a mere vessel but as source of desire that degrade our minds. Okay, and so the everyday chaos. This book is about artificial intelligence. Like the social aspect of artificial intelligence, and I mean, it's a philosophical work, I would say. So over here, the context is that the mind body split that we often have, in the Western philosophies, that we see a human being as a split of mind and body. The implication of that is that mind is considered something elevated, and body is considered something that is not that important, or lesser than mind. And the quote is around those lines, that like in certain conditions, certain like if you take this thought too far, and again, I think, I mean, it's best to read this book. There is a lot to cover, because I mean, of course, it's a deep philosophy. um, but if you keep stretching this further, the risk that you're running is that we end up denigrating the body only as a vessel. It's like a source of desires, and like it's essentially like something that degrades our minds. Whereas that doesn't have to be that way. I mean, it's a balance. I mean, again, different philosophies, there are different what's the word? Not trade-offs, but there are different implications of each philosophy. And again, it's like a huge discussion. I don't mean to get into that right now. So let's move on. Okay, becoming a category of one. It's a nice book. It's about the businesses who would like to seize a market. Essentially saying that okay, you're not. How do you place yourself in a category of one? That is, category of one is just your business in that particular category. So that if somebody is looking for what you do, you're the only person there, or you're the only business there. Okay, so the quote is, sometimes this business gets too easy. People get in it that don't know what they're doing because anybody can do it. Well, just anybody can't do it in a market like this. What's happening now is that God is giving our competition the opportunity to find another line of work. It's our job to help them in that effort. Okay, I don't really recall the context of this quote. I think it has something to do with, you know, like changing environments of business, and what if something gets hard. Yeah, I can't really recall the context, so I don't think I should really talk about this. Let's move on. Stolen focus. Okay, another book. We have covered this before. There are deeper forces than our phones and the web at work, and those forces led us, in turn, to develop a dysfunctional relationship with the web. Okay, yeah. So it's about the systemic nature of the phones and the web, and like the effect of machine learning, being everywhere, and how it can essentially identify you so accurately. So again, like this particular quote, it's just the snippet. It's just talking about like all of these different things, these different mechanisms, like the notifications that you keep getting on your phone, and the psychology of checking notifications, or the psychology of that there is this thing about hateful posts get more attention than posts that are promoting good intent. Because like, I mean, like, evolutionary speaking, that's what our brain is designed to focus on. So yeah, it's really about a lot of those things, and the highlight is it's a loaded highlight. Again, I would recommend to read this book. Okay, choose possibility. It has come up once before. Excuse me. Each of us has individual roles in the company, she observed. Imagine your own role and draw a circle around it. This is what you own directly. Now let's imagine each of us lining up our circles next to one another's. And you will see that there are gaps between the circles. True owners don't just own what's in the circle, they also own everything that falls in the gaps. I've seen this come up in various ways. I think like I've come across similar notions in the other book, Extreme Ownership, in working backwards. And it's like about, in working backwards, it goes under like the label of customer obsession. You're oriented towards your customer, whatever they need. um, and it doesn't matter what your role is. I mean, it does matter, but it's not. It's you're not like you're not a stickler following exactly what's written in your job description. You're going to go beyond that. It's kind of an expectation today. I mean, anybody knows this. Job descriptions are just like the baseline for job performance. In extreme ownership also, it's the same thing. Like the world today is so complex, that industry is so complex today, that job descriptions can't like it's not even possible for job descriptions to cover every aspect of your job. So consequently, it's just the baseline now. Everything is beyond that. And this it's the same thing. Excuse me. It's the same thing this highlight says, that I mean, it draws the picture. You're like, so I mean, just go through it again if you're curious. But yeah, if you think of it, in terms of these circles, and that, okay, this is the scope of my responsibility, and there's another, your peer, your colleague, and she may have that sphere of responsibility. What's something that's not being covered by either of you? And as a team, you own it. So that's really what the highlight says. Well, let's move on. Excuse me. Okay, growth is this is from the book Infinite Game. I think we are doing it for the first time. So growth is a result, not a cause. It's an output, not a reason for being. When we have a just cause, we are willing to sacrifice our interests to advance it. When we think money or growth is the cause, we are more likely to sacrifice others or the cause itself to protect our interests. So the context is about just cause. There is this concept in the book called just cause, that I mean, like that's an important thing if you want to play the infinite game. And if you think that, just like if you set your cause as growth, it's not a just cause. That's the point. It's this highlight is making. It says that the I'm sorry about this. Growth is just an output. It's not the reason you exist. It's not the reason your business exists. Growth is just a result. um, if you're doing well, if you're fulfilling other aspects of your business, the reason why businesses exist, um, growth is going to be an output of it. It's going to be as a result of it. But if you target it as a cause, um, okay, the highlight doesn't really cover, so let's stick on the highlight. So when we have a just cause, we're willing to sacrifice our interest to advance it. So this is more about focusing on the long term rather than the short term. Growth could be a short term, because every time you grow, it could be a short term result. But what you're really doing over here, for a just cause, for a true just cause, is that you're sacrificing your short term so that you have a true long term goal, and that would be your just cause. So I think that's the 10 highlights today. It's been a little rough today. I apologize for that. And you know, let's close it. I think this is exactly what to say. This is the bonus highlight that comes up every day. Let me quickly read this to see. Okay, I'm not really. I mean, I've not read this book, so I don't know what the context is. But again, it's on your screen if you want to kind of see it. But I think that's the end for the highlights today. Thank you, everyone.